Kierkegaard against the earth. Everyone is the exception. EAE News. Changing how the world thinks. An online magazine of big ideas. Alastair Haney, Professor Emeritus of the University of Oslo, who has written extensively of the writings of Soren Kierkegaard. We all find ourselves to be an island of consciousness. Each and every one of us shares the unique quality of being the single individual, away from religion or politics, or even the well-known leap of faith. We must rely on this individuality and maintain a steady, enduring trust in ourselves and our essential being. This is what makes Kierkegaard the father of existentialism, writes Alastair Haney. Kierkegaard admits that writing was an escape, a way of getting out of himself. It was therapy and might even be something he couldn't or do or be without, a compulsion like a drug, just as those outsiders with no saving talent may resort to narcotics. Kierkegaard has saved by his Kierkegaard was saved by his compulsion, but it brought its own torments. It was only when productive, that is to say, when his writing worked, that Kierkegaard felt well, as he later claimed of his production, its unifying topics, or the one that had also unified him, had from the very start been the single individual. It was this category that he came to regard as his main achievement and contribution. By sweeping away the scenarios in which our lives blur, the nakedness and isolation of the self-conscious being that we are, Kierkegaard believed his suffering revealed to him that being an individual really means. By sweeping away the scenarios in which our lives blur, the dark nakedness and the isolation of self-consciousness being that we are, Kierkegaard believed his suffering revealed to him that being an individual really means. Kierkegaard makes it clear that his theme was not himself, not his particular individual, nor anything that he, with his own background, can represent, something for which he might seek disciples. The single individual can mean the most unique of all of it, can mean each and every one. The meiotic Socratic of Minfery purpose of his writing had been to get hold to the single individual that everyone inherently is, despite popular proclamation about our being social animals. We are often told to hide our nakedness and assume that we are not properly human until socially clothed. The existential turn in writers, to which Brigade Soren Kierkegaard undoubtedly belongs, is to see it in reverse. Our true nature is one of nakedness and need, not just the means of survival as with other living beings, but more profoundly of a sense of naturalness in being human, something we see in other living creatures, while never reaching that scale of naturalness ourselves. Clearly enough, there is the sense that Kierkegaard felt far from reaching this naturalness himself, but as a professional misfit, he will see that social animal has a pathological as well as a natural and anthropological reading Although it is in human nature to seek company, the trajectory of association is not only consolation but inevitably divisive. Humanity itself as a humanity itself, a unified humanity or absolute humanity, is left in limbo with no natural home or habitat. There are only identities, individuals in association. En- Enlistment in a social genus comes with birth, either consciously or as or as a matter of course, too obvious to bring to mind. We bear our genetic descriptions from the start. As we grow into our societies, we become someone, be someone, be being something. Be, we become someone by being something. In either our protagonist rights of choosing oneself, there the self to be chosen is the one to find ourselves being when we wake up to what we are along with others. Beard deals and hands a cards, and while to our dying day the values of some remains the same, others take time to develop theirs. They are leanings, temperament, abilities, gender and sexuality, and on top of that, underneath, a variability of rigid or malleable social role. So while some plain ethnic properties recorded in our birth certificates and identity cards stay the same, other properties have their destiny in the future. How we turn out can be our own doing, less or more. Our protagonists insist on the latter, and doing so requires a great deal. The self-aware individual is not just conscious of being this definitive individual, equipped with these aptitudes, these tendencies, these these passions, influenced by these definite surroundings and these defined products of a defined outside world. No, this individual assumes responsibility for it all. That comes that come close to existentialism, but Kierkegaard's reading of it all is untypical of that ism. A simple narrative can explain the origins. A crisis arose in philosophy when theology and the classical ideals of authority broke down. First in the Renaissance and in the period of Enlightenment, the reaction was to restore authority focused first in the realm of ideas, idealism, and then in the discovery of natural laws through observation, positivism. Neither were interested in the thinker or on the observer as existing human beings. Where, in other words, in all these ideas and objective facts, are you and I? It's a question we face today when promises a theory of everything. That is to say, everything except us, which is also to say a theory of no one. What was once given by theory or classical humanism was transferred in existentialism thinkers and gross to the individual. Authentic individuals take personal responsibility for what they become. That they should become members of harmonious society is left to change or choice. Opponents spoke of the social benefits of consensus and the commonplace and of self-improving community under we umbrella. They saw moral narcissism in the existentialist ideal of self-seeking authenticity, and left soul reaching to artists and dropouts. Existentialists, existentialists in their turn claimed to be undermining deep-rooted fears that were covered by complacency and stultifying herd thinking. Kierkegaard seems never to be dropped the religious promise, and it's in his own life there is no evidence of a leap of faith. His faith was in something close to what that existentialist philosopher Martin Heidegger called an existential, that is an existential structure of being, not the specific truth of the faithful itself, but a faith in existence, something whose absence the sickness unto death will diagnose as a form of despair. Concluding, unscientific postscript makes fun of the leap by having famous German Enlightenment writer Lessing decline an invitation from the philosopher Jacobi to join him in taking this salto mortale into the eternal that story time, that history time never reaches. Lessing first admonishes Jacobi for thinking it can be done in company. When you are to live, to must do it alone. Also be alone in property, understanding that it is an impossibility. That is straight talking, but then comes the irony. The reason for this is not doing it alone, is that his reed is too heavy and his legs too old. Fate in Kierkegaard is less a matter of living, as is the stiffet for a better world, than of hanging on to this one in the light of what we dare to admit we are still to become. The concept of anxiety uses to live to distinguish Christianity from both Greek and Judaic religiousness. The two later assume we live in a perfectible world where imperfections are removed through quantitative accumulation. Christianity tells us that the world is inherently sinful. We are in error, and the source of those life truths that have to do with perfection have to be taken on trust in an example whose own being a combination of time and eternity is beyond our understanding. The leap is not an option that will give you something extra to add the cards you are dead at birth. Already in his philosophical crumbs, sometimes fragments, Johannes Climacus has said that what the teacher Christ provides in this regard is least of all something to be passed down like real estate. It is work to be done in the future from a growing recognition that and how one is an error. Faith in Kierkegaard is less a matter of living, as is defined to for a better world, than on hanging on this one in the light of what we dare to admit we are still to become. There is little room here for any kind of leap, but a lot of endurance and trust in the way demonstrated by a, a questioning Abraham as the rode silently up the mountain with his son. He kept quiet because whatever he said would make him sound like a lunatic or a criminal. When things were doing well, Kierkegaard will talk of being one more afloat, with the machinery in myself again in full swing. When fatigued, he was steaming with an engine too large to the ship construction. He realized that this situation wasn't unusual and hardly the point from which everyone should depart on their journey to selfhood. Indeed, perhaps very few, but that is in itself a good reason to look into the way the working part came together in a writer whose outsider positions pressed him into the core of Christianity. He will agree, not only by writings but indeed in my life, the intriguing secret of the whole machinery will one day be studied. An extra reason for doing that today is the truth that when the politics of identity and cancel culture and revelate as two sides of the same coin, those whose struggles and suffering have them probe deeper into the human condition may pave the way to a deeper basis for society, one where it is possible to see the point in saying that everyone is an exception, and where resentment and anger find their proper personal contexts.